We hope. Is it?
You started talking, then it broke up again.
Well, I don't have any other place to move to, so we're just going to have to go with this. I'm sorry.
It's better now. I guess I was interrupting you, so we're good.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. I have gone through and removed all the recordings from any slides that I have copied. So I'm hoping that means we're good to go. Okay, for those of you who are just joining this session, I apologize. We had to stop recording because my sound was distorted. I was at my mom's house and her internet is just not as good. And I tried my hotspot and that didn't work either on my phone. So I moved to a different location and hopefully this is working. We were discussing things that we'd already discussed last week. I'm just providing some more detail. The information is on the slides that'll be shared with you, so we're not going to go back. I want to leave time for questions for you guys. We're going to move forward. So I do want to talk real quickly about the remote learning plan because it will be a separate form that you fill out. You do not do any changes to the IEP during remote learning. What your special ed director is going to be telling you is there'll be a remote learning plan developed by your county that can be used to document what you're going to do in case of emergency situations where your school system would be closed and your buildings would be closed. So during remote learning, it's not an amendment to the IEP because at that point, we understand that in a lot of cases, we're not going to be able to fully implement the IEP just because of the situation. So if you have to make changes to your service delivery times during that, then, it's okay to do that. If you can, let the parent know that you're having to do it because you can't provide the full amount of time that you normally would, because with remote learning, you have all of your students doing virtual support at that time. If you can keep things the same, if you already have students who you see virtually and their schedule can remain the same, then that's awesome. You can do that. But with remote learning, it could be if you see a student twice a week, you might have to reduce their time to once a week direct and once a week indirect, where you would maybe send some information home to the parent for them to work with them on, some homework, something like that. Or if you're doing a consultation with the parent or the classroom teacher just to see how they're doing in class. But those times for remote learning can be flexible. But try to implement the IEP to the fullest extent possible. How can you be proactive about remote learning? One thing I would suggest is that you definitely have all of your parent contact information, and that's going to be on your remote learning plan. So make sure you have copies of those remote learning plans at home so that you can implement those right away. Go out. If I were you, I would make sure that the parent knows how to access that virtual platform that you'll be using. I know last year we were trying to help parents download Teams or Schoology and get them acclimated to it. If your parents aren't familiar with the platform you're going to be using, I would suggest even trying to have your county technologist or someone prepare a small short video to tell them how to download the platform onto their computers or whatever electronics they're going to be using to complete it. I would also go ahead and try to figure out a schedule. I believe on the remote learning plan, that's a template that Michael Knighton created, and some of your counties may choose to use that one. I believe it has preferred times or times that the parent will be available. Because remember, you need to have an adult present when you're doing any type of virtual therapy. And, some people have asked, do we really have to do that? And what I would say to you is that I heard reports of one student who was working with the iPad as their electronics at home, and they started walking around the house and took the therapist on a tour of their home and took them to their bedroom to show them around. And another took the iPad to the bathroom. And so, you don't want to be in those situations. So make sure that you have an adult present before you start your session. Any other ideas that you guys have to be better prepared for remote learning, be sure and share them in our Teams group. But with any type of, when you're doing remote learning or when you're doing virtual learning, and if you're doing in-person learning, be sure to allow time between your sessions to either sanitize if you're in person, or to get your materials ready for your next session if you're doing virtual. We're so used to having that traditional back-to-back schedule every 30 minutes, and I think we're going to have to definitely be sure to think outside the box and be flexible with all of this year. With ChildFind, each county is still doing their own protocols. I did talk with the nursing coordinator this week, and she said that each county is doing their own thing. Some nurses talked about even going to homes to do the 45-day screening. That's not going to be necessary, but in most cases, I'm sure. But if you have ideas about how your county is going to be doing that, and you can share those with us. If you could write it in the chat box, we can make sure everyone gets a copy, and we can just share those ideas together. It really is the county's determination to make that protocol, but I just want to try to help support you guys any way I can as far as giving you ideas of how to get it accomplished, especially those of you who have to do hearing screening as well. Drive-through screening. See, I've never heard of that. That's awesome. Drive-through screenings, that's a great idea. So if you can share those kinds of ideas in the chat box, it could be that you could take it back and talk to the person who's setting up your protocols, and maybe make some suggestions, especially for those kids that are maybe hard to get to come into the building and that kind of thing. So thank you so much for sharing all those. That's awesome. Okay, so please, that's exactly what we need you to do. Share those ideas, and Libby, if you'll be copying and pasting those into a document, we'll share those with everybody at the end. Thank you. Our forms. I have to admit, this is my fault. We had a virtual training this week, and I was involved both days, Monday and Thursday, and our office was just really busy this week trying to prepare for that and some other things that were going on. So I did not remember to check with my director about releasing these forms until last night. I did email her last night, and as soon as I hear that I can share them, then the plan is that I'll send them out to to the special education director's listserv first Monday. And then as soon as it's released to them, I'll be able to release to you guys. Okay. I see one question. Someone has a mic open. If you can make sure you close it, please. Is it okay to post info for parents on county websites? If you can be a little bit more specific about that. I can't see everything because I don't have my both screens. Use health assessments from the doctor. Yeah, absolutely. And that's what the nurses are doing too. So that's great. Keep sharing those pieces of information. And if I didn't see your whole question, we'll go back and make sure we get it at the end. And we're almost finished with my part here. So these forms will be coming to you next week. Libby has created an SLPA group for us so that just the people who have SLPAs in their counties will be a part of that group, and everyone else won't have to listen to the information. The new supervision plan, the new verification report, all of those things will be posted in that group by Monday. And there's also a short video that Libby made last year about calculating the direct and indirect observation forms, those kinds of things. Those will be posted, as well as the supervision modules that have to be watched by the SLP and the SLPA. They have to check that off on their supervision report that they've watched it. Those have been updated from our website, and the website people have been so overwhelmed with having to make the constant flexible changes to the reentry website that our website has not been updated yet. But those newest updated versions will be located under a videos tab in that group. The document itself will be available September 3rd, and I haven't heard that that's going to be delayed in any way. Libby also created a STEPS channel for us within this group. And so within that channel, she's already posted the forms. We will be posting the STEPS brochure and the STEPS modules that Libby created this summer for us. These modules tell you how to do STEPS if you've never done it before. And so you could use those for training purposes. If you decide to use STEPS within your county, and if you need support for that, please contact us and we'll be glad to provide a virtual webinar for your county on using STEPS. We had some issues pop up. We found out yesterday with our telepractice training and support group notebook. It was under resources, and someone accidentally deleted it while they were looking at it. We know that it was an accident. No one would have done that on purpose. But if you were trying to copy it, or if you were trying to save it to your computer or something, and you have a copy of it, if you could please let us know privately through an email, we'd appreciate it, because Mark Moore tried to help us yesterday find it, see if it was backed up in our OneDrive and that kind of thing, and we were not able to find it yet. So I just wanted you to know that if you're looking for resources, and I know this is a terrible time for that to have happened, but if you're looking for that resources notebook, unfortunately, it's not there. So what we're going to do is try to work on creating a OneDrive that we can share, that we can lock down. And we will have that ready for you as soon as possible. But just understand, there's a lot going on right now, and we're trying to prioritize everything as we need to, and we will definitely get on this. But it took Libby days to create that notebook for us. So it's going to take a little while, but we'll get it done. And the other information that was under files, like any resources that were filed under files, those are still there. And the videos are still there. So you still have that information. And what Libby had done was go through all those videos and write down any apps, resources, anything like that. So, just know that information. If you watch the videos, that information is there. I've had several people, of course, say that they're contractors and they can't access Stream. We talked about the private YouTube channel, and I finally was able to work on it this week. My niece actually helped me do it through Teams, set it up, but we thought we'd uploaded some videos there so that contractors could access it, but we were limited to only 15-minute videos, and as you know, our videos are longer than that. So we figured out a way to get around that, but it just takes a little bit of time to upload those videos. But please know those are coming. And to that private YouTube channel, we're also going to add videos like Jane Brandle's training, anything that was videoed with that. Just all of our training videos, any type of meetings, that kind of thing will be added to this private YouTube channel for contractors to access. Okay, we ask this every time, but I always want to ask this because we want to support you however we can. And hold on one second, I need to turn my air conditioner off. Okay, sorry about that. So please post any ways you think we could be helpful to you within our group. We always check these, and we'll try to make sure that we implement anything you suggest. No, I did not select a date for the boot camp yet. Google Classrooms, honestly, I think you're going to have contact your local technology people, because I have no idea about Google Classrooms. I'm sorry. So now I want to leave time today for you guys to ask your questions, because I'm sure there are a lot of questions out there. One question that came up yesterday that I do want to talk about first is, what if a parent refuses virtual services? If a parent has chosen virtual learning as the platform for their child to receive their instruction, their educational instruction, what do we do if that parent refuses virtual speech services? And it would depend upon whether or not that student has an IEP for other disabilities than speech. If the student has an IEP with other disabilities than speech, we're going to have to remember that as part of policy 2419, if they revoke consent for the speech IEP, then that means they revoke consent for the entire IEP. So that's just one thing to remember. That's still in effect because policy has not changed. If they are a speech only student and they revoke consent, they say that they don't want the services, then make sure you document in both cases whether they revoke the consent for the IEP or just speech services. If they're speech only, make sure your PWN reflects the fact that you think they need to continue services. That's your protection for providing FAPE, and then follow your county procedures for what you do in the case that a person or a parent requests dismissal or decides to revoke consent. All right, I'm going to quit sharing my screen so I can maybe see some of these questions, and I'll tell you what we're going to do. I'm going to looks like I already stopped sharing my screen.
No, it was on.
It was on, okay. Well, I don't know what's going on with my computer this morning, but is it on now?
Yes, we're still seeing relax. We're in this together.
Okay, is it still on there?
Yes.
Well, don't know what's going on here. I had hoped to be able to, I'll stop presenting. Let's try it.
There you go.
All right. So what I'd like to do now is, Libby, I think, can see when people raise their hands. And Libby, if you could call on people who have been posting questions, they can open their mics and we can talk about them together.
And I've also copied the questions that are that have been submitted. Great. But Ashley Carney has a question.
Okay.
Ashley, if you want to unmute your mic.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, they were making an announcement at my school, so I was holding up for a second.
I understand.
Do we have to amend all the IEPs to reflect a change in the start date? So for example, all of our IEPs start dates are August. Well, with the governor changing the start dates for students to September, do we have to go back and amend all the start dates on our IEPs to reflect that change?
That's a county special education director question.
Okay, so that would be per county.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but that is, they make that determination.
Okay, I had another one. Do you want me to go ahead and shoot that one? Okay. With the first 2 weeks of school, they are doing like a staggered start. So some kids are coming on a Tuesday only for 1 week, and then they're coming a different day the next week. And that's just for the first 2 weeks of school. are we locked into full services for September, or is it going to be like when we do for August, because the days, the month is shortened and we don't start till the middle of the month, that it is assumed that we wouldn't have full services for that month? Does that make sense?
It does. It would be, instead of using your 4-week amount of time that you would provide for the month, you would take out a third of that. Because you're only going to have 3 weeks. Actually, you take out a fourth of it. You're only going to have 3 weeks of school to get those IEPs met. But if you have monthly times,
Yes.
Hopefully you can come close to doing it. If you can't this first month, since we don't have everything, we're starting late. I think it would be understandable if it wasn't met. The only thing I would caution you about is some people like to wait until they do all their screening and all that kind of thing before they start. And you really are responsible for those IEPs for that monthly time once school starts in September. So,
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else want to raise their hand? Those who posted in the chat. Or Leanne, do you want me to read the questions?
You can go ahead and start reading questions.
Oh, Karen Underwood has a question.
Sure.
I just want to clarify. So if we have an IEP, just a straight up speech only IEP, maybe they're 90 minutes a month, direct special ed environment, and they have chosen to go straight up virtual, all their learning will be virtual. So we don't necessarily need to go to IEP to change anything, because they're still 90 minutes, they're still SEE, and that's the only thing on their IEP, right?
Correct.
Okay.
As long as you can still provide the service using that direct service and the SEE, then yes, you do not have to amend it or do anything to change it. And I've gotten a bunch of calls, a bunch of questions from even directors saying, if we go virtual, can we dismiss these students or put them in direct? And I'll just reiterate again that you don't have data to support that. As you're doing IEPs, your director is going to set up the protocol for you doing the IEPs. But that first 30 days of school, you're supposed to be trying to gather at least the first 30. Your director might set up a different time period for you, but that was just a suggested amount of time. You're going to be gathering data about where that student's functioning now, but you identify that student with an IEP last year or whenever they were originally identified, and you maintained the fact that they needed that service to access their educational environment. Well, the only thing that's changed now is the fact that that educational environment is now the virtual platform. So as far as putting them as dismissed or, indirect, there's nothing that indicates that they need that service change to support your decision. So I just want to make that clear, because I don't want anyone to get in a situation where they're recommending that and then that's not appropriate for the student. So.
Leanne Lee has raised her hand.
Okay. Hey, Lee.
Hey, how are you?
Hanging in there. It's Friday.
I know. So would we be able to, these children then that might be on a distance learning platform, if they are ones, maybe the moderate, or severe profound, or if they have just really not being able to attend to a computer for a period of time, could we be offering them the drop-in services then, if that is okay with our counties?
Yes, that could be an option.
Okay.
What you're going to hear is that for those students, it's the IEP team decision as to whether or not that student receives those virtual services. Because even though the parent requests it, the IEP team just determines whether or not that student is appropriate to receive their instruction virtually. So what the team decides should be what protects the team as far as offering FAPE. So a parent might disagree with their decision. If they say this severe profound student is not appropriate for the virtual options, then, and we think that he needs to be in person, the parent may disagree with that, but that's when their rights as far as procedural safeguards and those kinds of things come into play. I know it's going to be a difficult meeting, but as far as all the meetings that you're having with these parents, when you're working on remote learning plans or you're preparing for an IEP meeting, honestly, I think your best bet is to contact that parent ahead of time, tell them what you're thinking, ask how the student did this summer, ask for their input as far as if they've noticed regressions or things they're concerned about, and prepare them for the fact that you're going to be gathering data to make sure where they're functioning and how much service they'll need to be back to where they are making meaningful progress. So with those situations, Dawn Embry King in our office is calling them courageous conversations. But just remember that you're not going to be alone in those situations where you have those students with multiple disabilities and who may not be appropriate for the virtual options. This is all a process, though. Some counties are trying to figure out how they can offer virtual options with just like their classroom teacher actually working with them periodically throughout the day, doing activities from unique learning or something like that. So just please realize these situations are going to be flexible and they're going to be changing as we move forward. But it's IEP team who determines whether or not those services are appropriate. Okay. And on the PWN, you would document why you felt that the virtual option was not appropriate for that student.
Okay. And likely all service they wouldn't just get to say, well, I'll take my OT and classroom services online, but I want to come in for speech. We would probably do.
They could absolutely have that option.
Okay.
If it was not during remote learning, or if you had a safe location to be able to a sanitized location to be able to provide that therapy, that could be an option that you could provide.
Okay.
But that again would be an IEP team decision.
Sure. I wasn't sure if it was the same as like they can't pick and choose which services they still want. Okay. No, delivery is different for all of them. Okay.
Well, if you think about it, it's because they still be direct SEE, whichever one they did. So sure. That's why.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Leanne, there's a question about group therapy, if it was approved.
Yes, I'm sorry if you missed that. We started talking about that. You can do group therapy, just make sure you don't mention any medical information or any educational record information. I would call the student by their first name. I would not call them by both names. You don't typically do that anyway. You're not going to do something like saying, Libby Simmons, because you have autism, now I want you to do this and this. That's not how you would do your therapy session. So as long as you protect that information that way, it wouldn't be any different than a parent walking into your therapy room while you had those students in therapy. But what we did suggest is on the permission form that you use for permission to perform teletherapy or provide teletherapy, is that you include a sentence or two that says, I understand that my child may be seen using a group therapy, and that no medical or educational information will be shared or personal identifying information other than my child's first name. So the parent is informed that they, that they may be in group therapy, because that way, if the parent, for whatever reason, doesn't want them to participate in that, you can get that documented on that form. And there were questions before about whether or not you have to get a new permission form if you got one last year for providing teleservices, and yes, you do. It's a new amount of time that's being offered. Now we're offering FAPE, and so it's just good practice, best practice to receive and because you want to add that clause as well, it's a good practice to get new permission forms. And if your county's already sent out permission forms, follow what your special ed director tells you to do. Okay. If they didn't include that clause or something like that, just shoot me an email and I will be happy to just send them an email or something that say you might want to consider adding this or getting verbal permission for this before, therapists start grouping students.
Okay, Darlena from Wayne County wanted to know if we can use FaceTime to do check-ins, and do we need a consent sign to do virtual screenings?
You do not need a consent sign to do virtual screenings because you're not providing any type of IEP service at that time. You do need to make sure that you post, publicly post that you're going to be doing virtual screenings so that a parent has the option to not participate in that screening if they choose. Now you can post it in the newspaper. However you normally post that your sweep screenings or your fall screening is going to happen, you can post it that way. You can send it home in packets, post it on your school website, however you want to do it, but make sure the parents have the opportunity to see it and refuse to do it virtually if they choose.
Okay, Ria, you have a question. Do you want to ask it about the shortened days? The question is...
It wasn't really a question. It was just something that I believe maybe Ashley or Karen was talking about redoing all of these IEPs. And I was just noting that a lot of the reason that we're having to redo a lot of the IEPs is the bell-to-bell minutes are changing.
That's exactly right. And just understand too that they may change because the bell-to-bell minutes are changing. It may change a student's LRE. So just be prepared if that happens. It won't happen to speech-only students, but it very well could happen to other students who receive other services. And here again, your special education director is going to tell you the procedure and the protocol for to follow as far as setting up those IEP meetings and what happens during them.
Leslie, do you want to ask your question about the virtual schools, Leslie Bosley, or do you want me to ask it?
It doesn't matter.
Hey,
really
Leslie.
doesn't matter. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. We're running into issues with several students that the parents have chosen that the child will be participating virtually. And okay. My understanding from county office is that if a parent has chosen for a child to remain at home to receive virtual educational services, that they are not permitted in the buildings. And we're running into several issues with parents wanting to bring the students into the buildings for face-to-face therapies. And I am just not sure what direction and how to proceed with telling the other therapists the best route for that. Sure. So we're not running into any type of other issues and complaints.
Sure. Our guidance up until this point has been that any student who chooses the virtual option, and this has been in place since virtual options started in 2017. Anyone who chooses a virtual option can come to the brick and mortar building for services if the parent permits it. If they don't, then we have to offer the services virtually. But if they do choose to come to brick and mortar, then they would be allowed to do that. That's evidently a determination that your county special education director or superintendent have made. And I'm going to check with our director, Susan Beck, and make sure that I'm providing you the current guidance on that. And if we need to support anyone who has some confusion about that, then we'll take care of that. So let me get some clarification from her, and I'll post in our Teams group as soon as I receive it. Okay?
And Ashley wants to know if the leads will be getting a permission for teletherapy from the State Department, or is that a per county form?
That's a per county form. I have not created a sample one, but I can check and see if you think that would be helpful. If our director would let me just even post a sample one, because I understand they do need to make sure they get the information in there about group therapy and the adult being present. So let me check on that too. And if I can post one, I'll send those out.
And I missed Rhonda's earlier question. She wants to know, is there any guidance for doing in-person therapy safely and effectively with the face mask and distancing protocols?
You know, if you look in the toolkit, there's some information there on providing therapy safely. I honestly have not kept up with all of the CDC guidelines, but if you go to the CDC guidelines for schools, and we can post that in our Teams group, you can see the current recommendations. They've been changing kind of quickly in some places, but I do remember some of the things I saw was like to plan on at least 5 to 10 minutes to sanitize your room after each student, to not allow students to share materials. Like if you have crayons or card games and things like that, to make sure that you had some way to sanitize them. That's the reason I think those of you who have iPads would probably be fine, because you can sanitize that iPad between each student. If you have packets or game pieces or anything like that, you know, if you can make a little container or whatever, however you want to organize it, so that each student has their own, I think that would be a good plan. But the CDC is where you really need to find those suggestions. And Libby or I, we have a pretty busy morning, but one of us will post that in our Teams group right away. Thank you for asking that question. I should have already had that posted.
And I missed it. She asked it earlier and I missed that
Okay.
one. Are there any questions that I have missed? Anybody else want to raise their hand and ask a question or make a comment?
Well, I understand that it sounds like in a lot of cases I'm saying contact your special ed director, but that's honestly the way it is. That's the reason I had that slide last week about who do I contact. Most of what's happening within the counties is under county control, and you can see that it's under local control. You can see why. Counties like Doddridge, for instance, who only has had, you know, numbers of cases within the teens possibly, would have a different outlook on things than a county who's in the orange or red. So it needs to be under local control at this point as well. Your special education directors and your superintendents are consulting with your county health departments, and they're making those decisions. And so, you know, you can also check with your special education director as far as safety precautions that are recommended. Check the toolkit, and we'll definitely give you the information for the CDC. But just, you know, thinking about making sure you're keeping yourself and the students safe. The big thing is remembering to sanitize your area after and any materials that you used. So I know it's going to be different, and that's the reason you're going to have to be really flexible with your scheduling. And the same thing with virtual. Any of you who did virtual therapy last spring know that when you transition between students, you need a little bit of time to set up your materials and be ready to go to the next student. So we have been promoting the 3-to-1 option to special ed directors. And if there are any students that you think could benefit from the 3-to-1 and your special ed director allows it, I think I would make those changes when you do these IEP meetings to allow yourself the flexibility, but also the time to be able to make any materials that you need to send home, or if you need to, you know, figure out a way to get materials so that the students aren't sharing them and that kind of thing. You need time to do that. So one other thing that I will say is that remember, if you're billing Medicaid for the and you're doing telepractice, you need to put that Medicaid modifier on your code that you use when you turn in the Medicaid billing. Are there any? I hear some beeps coming in, Libby. Are there any other questions?
There's a remote learning plan question. Darlena wants to know, does the county develop the remote learning plan? And Karen wants to know if Michael Knighton has given a date for when the online remote learning plan will be available.
The county selects and if the remote learning plan format they want to use. So if they want to devise their own, then they take care of that. If they choose to use Michael Knighton's, that was shown to the special education directors yesterday. It's housed in the online IEP resources. It's not part of the IEP, but it's just housed there because it's under a code to get in, and that way it's just not available for anybody to get in and hack because it will have information about the student in it.
And Lee wants to know, can we group a kid in person and in teletherapy?
Somebody has their, is that yours? That's whistling. I hear
It's
whistling.
my bird. I'm sorry. It's
Okay,
my clock.
that's okay.
I'm going to
That's
get off
okay.
here and go to our next meeting.
Okay. Could you repeat that last question again from Lee?
Can we group a kid in person and teletherapy?
Yes. You can group them however you want. You can group students between schools. If you have a student in two different locations that are working on the same sim and you want to group them, you absolutely can do that virtually. As far as Michael Knighton's remote learning plan release date, he's saying hopefully next week. Aaron will have all the coding and everything and we'll be ready to go. And then there'll be directions on how to access that plan and that kind of thing. So I appreciate all of your questions and definitely your patience as we try to do these meetings from home between now and next week. I will definitely have my mom's internet upgraded so we won't have this issue anymore. So thank you for your patience. We'll get this posted as soon as we can. And you guys have a great weekend, and we'll be back on again next Friday. And for those of you who are attending RIA's session, be sure you're on here at 11 because this will be our RIA session for telepractice for the month. So thank you guys so much for everything, and please continue to send those questions and emails. All right, and call anytime. I'm right here. Thanks so much.